Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teachers Talk Sports. Today, we have the somber job of talking about a bunch of injuries, what that'll mean for the Blazers, and at the end, we'll touch on more injuries and talk about the NFL. Sports, brutal place to live. And with that, how are you doing today, Brian Fenema?
Tough week. Tough week for your guy. I'm doing okay. You know, all things considered, we are healthy, so that's good. So I feel good about that. But yeah, our beloved Portland Trailblazers managed to lose my two favorite guys in a matter of a week, and that's tough. It's going to be a while. Yusuf broke his wrist. He'll be out 6 to 8 weeks. I broke my wrist, not playing basketball, but broke it in my non-dominant hand. And it took at least 2 months before it started feeling somewhat normal. And then it took another couple months after that where I felt like I had all of my strength back. But granted, I'm not a professional athlete. So that was tough. And then the CJ thing looked like an ankle sprain or, a minor foot injury. And then yesterday we wake up to the information that it's a small fracture in his foot. So he's at least out a month. He'll be reevaluated in a month. So that's tough. The tone of these podcasts. Oh, how quickly they can change when you're losing two of your three best players. But, that's sports for you. But I'd love to hear what you think about it, and then I'll give you exactly what I think is going on, because I think that there's some shenanigans going on.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. It's just like it's totally changed the way I feel about the whole deal. I mean, when we got Covington and Derrick Jones and Cantor, the excitement was super high, and you all heard it here on the pod. And now I've just shifted. I mean, they'll all be back in time for playoffs, unless something wild happens. They'll all be back for the playoffs, but it just changes the trajectory for the team of like, okay, we're going for a top 4 seed, and now we're probably looking at a play-in. And for CJ, it's like, oh my God, he might actually have a chance to make the All-Star team in the crowded West. And I let myself attach to that a little bit, even if it was still a long shot. He was absolutely murdering. And now that's gone. And Nurkic, he was frustrating the hell out of me, let me be honest. But he was finally starting to show some signs of being himself. And now he's out again for another 2 months at least. And wow, it's just like I was listening to CJ talk about it yesterday, and it's like, he made the point that there's bigger things going on in the world. There's more important things going on in the world. And that's true. And it still matters to my weekly life of this team. It just totally changes the way I feel about it. I'm still going to watch all the games, and be super excited about it. But it's just, in a way, it kind of takes away some of the stress because every game doesn't feel like it matters so much anymore. Now it's more just going to be about like, how are the young guys looking? Like, will any of Harry Giles or Nas Little or Ant Simons pop? Will Gary Trent move into the starting lineup? And will Rodney Hood, will he continue what he did in his last game? And it's just more about those side storylines. And I've rooted for, we've all rooted for plenty of bad teams, so we know how that whole drill goes. And I enjoy that process too, but it just changes the way it feels.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely changes the optimism level. That's for sure. I know that for 6 weeks we've been saying, man, get us to January, ride that momentum into February. Yeah. It's going to be on. And now it's going to be a lot tougher. And you say, hopefully they're back for the playoffs. Hopefully we can stay in a position to stay in the playoff chase, because unfortunately I feel like we know what to expect here. Dame is going to gas himself out again. And he did it last year. And that's what I'm most worried about. Is he going to win the scoring title now? Probably.
Maybe.
That's looking like that could be a thing. But it's really tough, because that's what happened. Is you've seen we've just come to 2 straight postseasons in a row, and Dame has just kind of ran out of energy. And it's not like the Blazers have been afforded the ability to rest guys. Dame can't take nights off where he's not injured, because the Blazers just don't have the foundational pieces to overcome missing their superstar. And that's really frustrating. And I know that we've talked about Nurk and what's going on and whether it's something mental mixed with physical. And I felt like he was starting to get it. You were starting to see the energy. And it just comes down to just fluke circumstance. And I'm tired of it. Like, what is with these fluke circumstantial injuries? It's really starting to bother me. It really is. It's just like all of these things are happening on just regular plays where it's not weird stuff is happening. Yusuf broke his leg in half, just landing on his leg wrong from a rebound. Zach dislocates his shoulder just by bumping into a guy who's 30 pounds lighter going for a rebound. Yusuf breaks his wrist swiping at a ball, trying to play hustle defense. And then CJ gets stepped on it or steps on somebody and has a fracture in his foot. It's like, how are these just regular standard plays happening? And why are our guys getting hurt? Like it just makes me think that there's just like something out there where it's just, we can't overcome. And I know part of this season, I was excited about Zach and his step back in his healing process really hurt. And so it's just, I hate it. I feel like there's like this weird energy coming from the Blazers, and I don't know what it is. I can't figure out why our guys are getting hurt on just regular plays that, you know, people in gyms all throughout the year, all throughout America are doing on a regular basis. And granted, it's a game of inches, just like football, and that's kind of how it works. But it's tough. You know, we were texting during the last game, and I was like, oh my goodness, that Derrick Jones Jr. where he was going up, and the guy tried to wrap him up. Those are the kind of plays where you're like, oh my goodness, you could get really, really hurt. You know, that's when soft tissue injuries happen. And of course, he's fine, but it's just like these standard things are happening, and our guys are getting hurt, and it really it hurt. Last week, it hurt my soul. It really did. And the optimism isn't near on the level it was, but we're going to stick to it. We're going to see how it works. And I think, as I've referred to you before in text, you are the silver lining specialist. And yes, it'll be nice. Hopefully we see a little bit more of the development of Gary, but man, now Gary's going to get even more attention, and that's kind of troublesome. But it was nice to see Rodney put some confidence together, put together a nice game, but it's tough to not sit and think, what the hell if? So that's just where I'm at mentally, I guess.
Yeah. And what I think more than CJ's scoring in the starting unit, where we miss him the most is as the backup point guard in that second unit. Because quite frankly, and he's still young, but Ant ain't it. Like, I think we've seen enough to say, at least for today, for tomorrow, Ant is not the guy leading that second unit. He looks really timid.
Yeah.
He's not decisive, and when it just doesn't feel like he's got the control of the offense at this point. Whereas CJ, he's a starter, but he's also like the best backup point guard in the league. He's absolutely cooking in that second unit. So we're going to miss him there big time. And we already are. You see it as soon as he goes out, 10-0 run. As soon as he goes out, 6-2 run. It's just like, and that hurts. But yeah. I don't know. The silver lining is it's harder to look at here. And it goes like to a more generalized thing where it's like, Zach Lowe sort of touched on it. It's like, do you tank or do you have honor in being good but not great? And I think this question's been answered last year, as recently as last year. And it's like with somebody like Dame and Terry, it's not in them to tank. And Dame's going to do everything he can, burn himself out to scrap and claw to something of an 8th seed. When really it might be in the Blazers' best long-term future to just not only get a better draft pick, but also not put unnecessary wear and tear on a young superstar or a smaller superstar body. But it just won't happen. And so to me, it kind of just goes back to being like, you know what? This sucks. And I'm really grateful to have an NBA team in a city that I live in and that I love and that I get to follow, and I get to see CJ when he's at his high talking about how he's a shark. And then I get to see him a week later when he's at a low, scratching his head, sort of trying to get through this, saying that he's feeling at peace, but you can see on his face that he's real sad. And just get to ride those waves with these guys. And that, for me as a fan, it's all about that journey. It's obviously not just about like winning a title, because as a fan, like when the team wins the title, it's like, this happened with me in baseball. It's the only time my team's won a title. And it's like, when they win it, for me, it's like, well, I didn't really like do anything. So I can only feel like so good about it. It's all about the ride, you know? So
yeah.
I'm grateful to be on the ride. I'm grateful that they represent this wonderful city that we live in. And that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a couple of things to unpack there. Like the big thing with CJ that we're going to miss is it's just like, he's my favorite player to watch. I love his game. He's just an absolute killer in the mid range. His handles are incredible. That's going to hurt for me, is missing my favorite player to watch. That sucks. Couple things, you know, we talked about it about, you know, a little less than a year ago, where I said it might be time to save some of those miles on Dame, and we knew it wasn't going to happen. Then the break happened from the pandemic, and that was kind of like, okay, at least he'll get his legs. So he's obviously, they're not going to do that. And then tanking is not an option for this year. It's not. We traded away our first round pick, so there's no point in tanking. And Dame's probably thinking, I don't care. I'm going to carry us back into a playoff spot, but it's going to be one of those things where at what cost? And you were right. You know, Zach had a great point about being a Blazers fan. And I, for one, think that it's important to have a competent and team that you can feel proud of and, you know, really celebrate their accomplishments and not have that it's championship or bust mentality. But I know the pushback will be, when you have a top 5, top 8 player in the league, it should be championship aspirations every single year. And I understand that. But winning championships are hard, especially when you play in the West, especially when there's some of the teams that we have right down the road from us. And that's where I kind of separate with some of the upsetness from other Blazers fans, is they're just like, we need to do everything possible to win a championship. Yes, obviously, we all want to win a championship. We want it for our city. We want it for our friends. We want it for our students. Like that's obviously what we're about. But guess what? Winning championships are hard, and you need fundamental things to go your way. And they're clearly not going to just go that way this year. They're not going to pack it in, though. I guarantee that, because like I said, there is no upside from tanking unless it's time to ship somebody out. And now where the roster is I don't see a lot of flexibility nor desire to be flexible with some of those options. So it's going to be interesting. Like I said, we're just going to continue to watch and just root for these guys. But we're in that weird spot right now where it's just like, I want them to play well, but I also don't want them to be so dependent on Dame that hopefully some of the other people can really help solidify this core. So, but we'll see. Injuries are part of sports. I get it. And it's okay to be frustrated about it. It is. But when you lose 2 of your 3 best players within a 5-day span, it is a punch in the balls. Like, come on. Like, that hurts. You know, those are my dudes. Like, I've made no, like, everyone knows those 2 are my guys that I cheer for the most. And to see it happen, it sucks. And the Yusuf thing is tough because I felt like he was finally getting over the mental battle and getting into this place where he was going to be ready to move forward mentally and physically. And so this is going to be just another thing to overcome. Who knows what's going to happen with Zach? Hopefully CJ can get healthy. He's going to be still okay, but it's just when you had a chance at a season like that and then just for it to go away in such a freaky way, it was just really disheartening, we will say, I guess. But, you know, that things move on and we'll see what happens.
Yep. And that's kind of all that can be said. So the pick that we traded was top 20 protected. So there theoretically could be a reason for tanking, because if we fall out of the top.
I'm sorry, you cut out a little. Did you say top 20?
Top 20 protected, yeah. So if the Blazers were not good, then they would get their pick. They have to be one of the 10 best teams not to get their pick.
Okay, well.
So there's a good chance they get it. I feel, like I kind of just said, to me, I'm just going to be really watching the young guys. I'm going to enjoy Dame's Inferno because it's going to happen again now. You know, we get to root for one of the best players in the world, and we're going to see him shoulder a big load again, and it'll be fun. That'll be exciting. I liked what I've seen from Derek. I feel like Derek Jones Jr. is getting more comfortable, especially on the defensive end. I'm really loving his connection he's getting with Dame from those half-court lobs. We've seen a few of those, and that'll be super fun to watch. Man, Robert Covington needs to start hitting wide open threes. Like, he is really making this game harder.
Who does that sound like, though? You know, we've gone through that, and I like what Robert brings on the defensive end as opposed to some of the other guys, but he's missing open shots, and
a lot of
if
them.
the past 3 playoffs have been any indication, teams are going to tell him, by all means, sir. And the percentage, I think it's down 15% or something from last year, which is unfortunate. But he's finding his place, as was Derek, and that's what's hard. Is I felt like these guys were finding their place with each other, and that's when this happens. And so that's the real upset thing. The thing that it's just like you just kind of shake your fist at it, Johnny. It's just It's tough. But you're right, and this team will grow together, hopefully. But we know what the narrative in Portland is and who the blame has gone solely on. And I'm interested to see what their kind of thinking is. I probably could figure out what they're going to say is, now Terry's going to have an excuse built in or whatever. And it's tough. It's really tough. There's a lot of things that need to go the Blazers' way for the Blazers to make the kind of run that they made 2 seasons ago. A lot of things need to go your way.
Yep.
And if those things don't all happen, and almost to the extent, like Zach Lowe said, of you almost are hoping for an injury. I mean, I don't think we need to go that far, because I think if the Blazers are a healthy team, they are a top 4 team where they could play with people. We said that on this pod 6 weeks ago. We were pretty comfortable in where the Blazers were. And this, again, we just keep talking about it, and there's nothing's going to change. But it's okay to be upset and think that it sucks, because it does. It sucks.
It does.
But then it's weird, but we are seeing a ton of weird scheduling stuff happen, especially the past 2 weeks. And as you and I just said, as I told you right as we were logging on together, the Blazers aren't even playing tonight. Apparently Memphis doesn't have the right amount of guys. So, I kind of inquired about it last week, and you hadn't heard much, and there's still a little bit of whisperings, but I don't know. The NBA has a problem with their safety protocols going on, and if I just had to guess, it's not because the guys are dapping up after the end of a game. I don't think that's where it's coming from. So I think that there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and who knows, that schedule might change a little bit. And hell, Memphis lost Ja right away to a pretty severely sprained ankle, which could be almost worse. As weird as that sounds, the bone might heal faster than ligaments and muscles. So, CJ's going to be okay. He's going to be in discomfort for the rest of the season, but he's going to be able to come back. And like a high ankle sprain or plantar fascia, that could be worse, really. But we're sitting here waiting for bones to heal for our guys.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So that's where we're at. We're sitting here waiting for bones to heal. And while we do that, in the background, well, I got one thing that we hadn't talked about, but I just want to touch on a little bit, which is James Harden. What do you think about him in Brooklyn? When I was listening to national pods about it, and even before he played a single game, I thought that all the ones that I listened to, they sort of took it from the angle of like, how is this not going to work? And I personally thought that they were sort of missing the mark of like, at least discuss how incredibly great this could be if it all works together. And so far, I mean, Kyrie's not there yet, and he's a big old wrench. But just the Harden KD talent-wise is remarkable. Those dudes, like, how do you defend 2 guys that can stretch a defense that far from the bucket and can get to the bucket? It's like that. They can't play any defense themselves, but offensively, that team has a lot of firepower.
It's funny because imagine being a Nets fan and listening to us talk about defense.
Right.
Yeah, you're right, because the conversation around the country on Wednesday, it went through on Wednesday. Man, what a busy day Wednesday was. Man, screw last Wednesday. What was that date so I can always remember? F you, January 13th. Screw you. Okay. But anyway, yeah, I've been glued to it, and tonight Kyrie comes back. So guess what? I'm going to watch that game for sure. So it'll be interesting, but I think it speaks to the level of how reactionary we are, and maybe you and I are just being a little reactionary. This could turn out to be fine. The Blazers might weather the storm and be just fine, but let's not react so big. And people are reacting big because of what the Nets had to give up. And I wanted to go back to what the Nets gave up for those terrible end of their career Paul Pierce and KG thing, and how they just dug themselves out of draft capital hell. And they've managed to put together a nice roster with their own picks, and yet they went after Harden. But I think it was more of an insurance policy thing and a need to get KD another guy because of not knowing about the flakiness of Kyrie. But let me tell you what's going to work. The scoring. They're going to score. And I watched the game, and I was trying to figure out, it's a lot of ISO. But it's a lot of ISO with a pass and a backdoor screening or backdoor cutting. They've got cutters like crazy, and they're doing that because all eyeballs are on those two guys. And so it makes everybody else's job so much easier. So I like it. I don't like it from what is this saying about the NBA? And I know we talked about this for 20, 30 minutes on a previous pod about the kind of message that it's sending for the league as a whole. But I'm not going to be like, hey, that was kind of a ripoff. I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to watch that shit. I'm going to watch it. And I'm going to be like, hey, man. And, all things considered, I would rather see James in Brooklyn with KD and then whatever you're getting from Kyrie than watch that Houston nonsense. So for me as a fan, I'm like, cool. I'm about it. If I was like a Knicks fan or a fan of a team in the East, I'd be like, man, that sucks. But it's crazy. But these things happen. And if you really, really think about it and dig real deep, let's think about it. This trade, this is pretty hyperbolic. I understand. But this trade could have saved Karis LeVert because the physical showed that he has a cyst on his kidney.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing where I assume I'm not a doctor, but I assume he was probably living his life not realizing he had something growing on his kidney.
Yeah.
So let's take that with a little bit of it and be excited about that portion of it. I know that's maybe me just grasping for straws.
No, I think that's real, man. I mean, this could be saving his life or something like that.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have come up had they not brought him in for the physical. And then you bring back the other thing, and this is the thing that I keep going back to is the James Harden thing. It's like, okay, I've seen it now. I'm used to it. What's Vic going to look like on Houston, and then what's LeVert going to look like with Indiana? For Indiana to be like, we're cool. This is cool. We realize that we might not have Karis for the rest of the season, but we're going to keep things, and we're not going to let the trade fall through. So does that speak to where they were with Victor Oladipo, who's, by all accounts, a very liked guy? So I don't know. It's interesting, and it brought up another line of thought for me. And my just overall thought about it is I'm excited to watch the Nets. It makes it more exciting for me as a basketball fan. So that's cool. But I think that there's a lot of things that we can take out of this story and still be like, okay, maybe I was a bit reactionary going into the season about it because I didn't like the way that Harden was going about his business, and maybe even trying to pull the wool over us, looking kind of thick. But now all of a sudden he doesn't look as thick. I don't know. Black is slimming, red is not. So maybe that's part of it. But I think it's great for the league, and I think it's for me, it makes them must-watch television. I'm really excited for them to start tonight, actually.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. It's good for the league from it generates interest right now, and I think you would agree with me when I say it's not necessarily great for the league in terms of what it means. That just no matter how many years are left on your deal, you can. And I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if they win the title and he's clearly their second best player, I guess that helps his legacy. We'll see how it all goes. But I don't know. There's something about the way that he did it that even if they win that title, and it helps his legacy, especially if he has a few big moments. But it's not gonna propel him to where he would have been if he would have won one in Houston.
Fair.
Yeah.
And I think for James, I don't know. I think for him right now, he's probably just like, I'm an adult and I want to do what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe he isn't as like focused on legacy as maybe we are from the outside. And maybe that
Yeah.
says something about James. And good for, good for them, I guess. We'll see how it works out. I'm liking it as a casual fan, but I'm not sure if the Nets are on the schedule, but if they are, I'm not going to be excited that night.
No. Yeah, you make a good point. CJ had tweeted, he tweeted a picture of Harden, and Harden just looks so happy. And CJ,
Yeah.
the idea of it was just like, man, look how happy this guy is. This is good. So I think there's that.
You just look at the difference between Sure. Well, and going back to that, you look at the difference between those two press conferences. James was so excited, and he got a couple questions that you could tell he didn't like. So we just laughed him off. I'm like, at least he's taking it in spirit. Whereas yesterday, Kyrie's answering his questions, and he's literally laying his head on the table, looking defeated, looking like, something really bad is going on. I can't quite figure that cat out. I know it's apparently there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know about.
Of course.
Okay. But it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. That's for dang sure. So I'm excited, and it's going to give me something else to look at, because you're right. Like, my expectations are not going to change that drastically. I still expect and will be very, very disappointed if the Blazers do not make the playoffs. We can make that abundantly clear. They're not going to lose out until we get CJ back. They're still going to be competitive, and they're still going to play competitive basketball. It's just going to be a lot more work.
Yeah. So, and especially on Dame. Yep. And guys will probably step up, and there's a solid chance that out of this we'll get a new rotation player, or a more confident rotation player for when the band's all back together. So, yeah. Anyways, I appreciate your thoughts on that. Before we close out here, I do just want to get your thoughts on the NFL. I mean, your guy, your team is at the center of it all right now. Mahomes he's a little woozy, but so far it looks like things are going okay. I mean, they managed to get by the Browns. How are you feeling? What are you thinking?
Well, again, it was just one of those weeks where it's just like, man, can't catch a break. And, the way I measured it is like, how upset was Anisha? Because she hates when Pat has the ball in his hands, when he's running around. She's like, oh, I hate the way he runs with a ball.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. It's fine, Nisha. Like, that's just how he does it. But I'm never going to sit back and question Andy Reid, but he was already banged up he already had a toe issue.
Yep.
And I just wasn't in love with the play call in the first place. Now, I want it to be known to anyone who maybe doesn't understand the logistics of it. Pat Mahomes did not necessarily suffer a concussion. He is simply in concussion protocol. Had he laid on the ground and not tried to get up, he wouldn't have necessarily come back into the game, but I don't think that independent neurologist comes out and says, hey, we need to pull him. But you could tell in the body language on the guys around him that was like, ooh, he needs some help here, which I understood. It was a bad look, but it didn't happen from him hitting his head. And so that's good to kind of have as a thing. I'll continue to go back to my guy, Jay Glazer. And I think it was just, the lights went out for a second, not from getting hit, but from having his artery, like from getting choked. And I really think that that's part of it. Is I don't think he hit his head. I think he was almost choked out and maybe lost consciousness for a bit of time. And if you've ever been choked out or lost consciousness, you can't just stand back up.
Right.
And so for Pat and for all the fans around the NFL, it needs to happen. But obviously sometimes you need to step in and protect the player from himself. But there's no one who doesn't want to see these matchups in the AFC and NFC championship without Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you could be the biggest Bills fan in the world. I'm sure you've been a very big Buffalo fan for the past 2 seasons, all of you bandwagoners. But, you could be the biggest Buffalo fan in the world, and you don't want it to happen like that. You don't want Chad Henne to be the guy, because then it's just kind of the built-in story. But I think Pat's going to be okay. I'm more concerned about his foot at the moment. He did a light run through practice today, so practiced at limited capacity. But I think we're going to be okay. But Vegas sure seems to think that he's going to play. And for me, that's where I go. Is I was like, well, Vegas created the line. Because usually when it's in flux like this, they just won't put a line out, and Vegas had a line right away. So I feel pretty confident about him playing. I don't know to what extent, but it's just nice. But I'm like just the overarching conversation of injuries. It's a lot scarier in football, but yet we're seeing some really, really scary injuries to guys on our squads that we really care about that are like, oh man, like these guys aren't even hitting each other every time. So it was a weird week, Johnny. It really was. Like, it's nice that the Blazers got a couple W's out of it. It's nice that the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship for the third year in a row. It's nice to be a fan of both of my teams. It's nice to be able to kind of claim both of those as a fan. So it's cool, and I look forward to Sunday. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. Pat plays, the Chiefs win. Simple as that.
Yeah, I love that take. I love hearing your thoughts on the Chiefs. Not a team fan of any of the 4 teams left, I just think that it'd be hard to ask for much more. You got arguably the best 2 young quarterbacks. You could throw a few more names in there, but definitely Mahomes, and then Allen is the hottest name out right now, and on the AFC side. And then you got the 2 best old quarterbacks on the other side, the guys that we've been watching for our whole lives, it feels like.
Yeah.
And we got a chance for Tom Brady to go to it and maybe win a 7th Super Bowl. Like, I never even really thought that was like possible. Maybe it's not. They're still the least likely of the 4 probably, but man, I can't wait for Sunday. I'm so excited to watch that doubleheader of hopefully Mahomes versus Josh Allen and all the other remarkable pieces out there. Travis Kelce, shout out. Thank you so much for my money. And then Rodgers and Brady on the other side. So I just think the NFL's got to be stoked.
They are loving it. I promise. Because, their storyline after storyline, you can't think of a bad Super Bowl matchup. And that hasn't necessarily been the case for the past couple of years, where it's just like, oh man, I don't know how we sell this. You can sell all of these little storylines, and that's really great. And the fact that Rodgers and Brady are playing in the playoffs for the first time is kind of a really cool narrative as well, where it's like these guys, obviously there's not very many opportunities for them to play in the playoffs, but with the Patriots going to 50 Super Bowls over the last 10 years, you would think maybe they would have matched up. But the one time that Green Bay did go to the Super Bowl, they didn't happen to match up against that Patriots team. So that's kind of an exciting storyline. But the NFL has got to be loving this, because they were from day one like, we're going to fire through this season. We are going to hammer our way through. And here we are a week out. Not a single player tested positive last weekend. That's really exciting. We hope that continues to be the case, because, gosh, we really want to fire through it. But you're looking at the difference in how they were kind of handling it, and the kind of scrutiny that they took about starting a season in an era with the coronavirus. And then you see how the NBA is handling it as opposed to how they did handle it with the bubble. And it's just like the NFL's got to be loving it. They're patting themselves on the back and be like, we are crushing it right now. And I think it's going to be really riveting stuff. And like, the games weren't necessarily super exciting. Even last week, it was just like, there was some wonkiness in it, but the ratings, I'm sure, are going to be incredible. And this week, the ratings are going to crush, because fans are going to want to see Josh Allen. There's going to be a lot of casual fans who just haven't had a chance to catch many Buffalo games this year, who want to see what the buzz is about. And they're going to see right away, this guy sticks off the TV. You're just like,
he's amazing to watch.
One of these guys does not belong here. And it's just because of his size and his stature and the way he throws the ball. And then it's just nice to have that, as other fans are going to be really looking forward to it. And I hate to like digress back into like Brian toting some of his other opinions, but if you guys think Josh Allen is fun to watch, you are going to shit your pants when you watch Trevor Lawrence, because this guy is I'm telling you, there's a really good chance Trevor Lawrence could be a top 10, top 15 player or quarterback in the league next year as a rookie. So it's the league is in a really good place with young talent, and it's nice to have basically the revered 4 best quarterbacks in the league right now. Throw in Deshaun as your 4 finalists. So it's really great. But
pretty awesome.
It's awesome. And I know we've got a lot to talk about. We'll probably do a lot of Blazers focus over the next couple of weeks, because there's we're gonna have a week off before the Super Bowl. But man, I cannot wait for after the Super Bowl, when you and I can just start shooting about, especially for you particularly, about, man, this is going to be a great offseason because of the quarterback movement. It's going to be so much fun, Johnny. Like, you're going to send me a new name every day. And I promise you, I'm not going to get tired of it, because talking quarterbacks is my jam, dude.
Absolutely.
I love it. And there's like, I've got a lot of friends who, their team is just like right there. You just need that one guy to get over the hump. And just yesterday with my sports and broadcasting club, shout out Fabian Sports and Broadcasting Club, we were talking about it. We looked at this at the draft order and looked at the top 20. And of the top 20, there's literally 14 teams who could consider either drafting or replacing a quarterback. And it's going to be so exciting, dude. It's going to be so much fun. It's especially to rap with you because I know Niners fans are just like, please just give me one of these guys. Give me any of these guys.
Right.
And so it's going to be fun.
Watson would be a dream. Well, I mean, dude, we'll be thinking about him. I'm kind of intrigued by Mac Jones in the second round, although he might not fall to the second round. And I don't think we'll get any of those top 4 guys in the first round, but yeah, I mean, I'll be thinking about quarterback all off season long for sure.
It's a great problem to have. You know, if you think about even just as early as 4 years ago in 2016, when in the first round of the playoffs, it was Mike Glennon backing up for the Raiders against, God, I don't even remember who the Texans quarterback was. And you're just like looking around the league. Like, granted, those were some injuries, but you're like, God, there's just only 10 good quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. There's 20 great quarterbacks now, and there's about to be an influx of 2 guys who I really, really think can be solid guys and have 10-year careers coming. So it's nice to be, as a football fan, to be excited about something like that because, like I said, it's coming. And this is going to be the most talked about NFL offseason in a while. And the NBA is probably going to be like, oh, we need some of that energy back. And the NFL it usually takes their breaks during the summertime. But between the draft and camps and free agency, it's going to be a lot to talk about. And I'm excited about that.
Me too, man. I love the offseason almost as much as I love the season these days. It's so fun to follow that movement. It's awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that, man.
It's exciting stuff. Before we go, I miss watching football. I really do. So maybe we can find a good way to cheer on our Kansas City Chiefs this weekend together. I don't think your Bills gear is in the mail yet. So I hope not yet. So, but I know you're not the only person who's like, I kind of like this Buffalo storyline. So if I sound bitter, it's because I'm tired of hearing it.
Right. Of course you are. Yeah. No. Yeah. Let's talk about that off air and we'll figure something out.
My man. Yeah. Hey, we managed to I managed to not cry. I was genuinely concerned. I'm an emotional man.
4 of our cheeks are dry.
Like my eyes are a little red because you could tell. Like there's some times, but
I did. I will tell you, I shed a tear when I woke up that morning, and I read it right before I went to bed. The CJ injury update. I shed a tear. I did.
Maybe this is revealing a little too much behind the curtain, but it would have been the first time in the life of Brian Fenma where I cried on the toilet.
I think that's just enough curtain pull for this episode.
I think that's a perfect little ender right there.
Absolutely. All right, brother. Well, great to see you. Great to chat as always.
We're going to have more fun stuff to talk about next week, and always. It's still fresh, and that I hope the tone didn't turn anybody off. And no, you don't have to check on us. We're okay. We're really okay. I look forward to next week and hopefully talking about some developmental and rotational fun pieces that we see in these Blazers games as we move forward.
Exactly. That's the thing to look for right now.
Absolutely. Hey, enjoy the weather while you can, because apparently winter is still here and it's coming this weekend. So, hey, man, enjoy that sunshine, brother.
Yes, sir. I'm on it. You too. All right. I'll talk to you real soon.
All right. Later, buddy.
Bye.